Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Thank you.
We do it next time.
Everybody.
Let's go right back on that.
I know, that's not a thing anymore, that's why I'm like, something's funky.
Has the solar ordinance gone anywhere yet? Has that been approved? Is it like the solar ordinance? Yeah, that was approved a long time ago. Isn't it?
Oh, I don't know. Where's the meeting?
I think it was finally adopted maybe in November.
Yeah.
I think I looked at this, I did get a fee schedule. It would be what, miscellaneous?
Or is it its own?
Really?
I don't know, my books, 2 years old.
Shoreline table awareness.
You tried the end, but it's one of the last ones.
Wasn't the last thing is shoreline zoning. Miscellaneous, special. I see.
Well, then it could be under,
I see a solar.
well, maybe that's not up to date. I think. Sure, well, then I saw this.
So I don't know the answer to that. This is supposedly the June 2022 edition. So anything approved in the fall is not on.
Right, I think it could have been, well, but I also could be getting my years mixed up, it could have been fall, November
Well, that's
2020.
a select person. Is the solar ordinance approved?
The what?
Solar ordinance?
Yeah.
Okay. Just because our books ran out.
I don't know if someone
Is it
will say
online?
that. I don't know about that.
Haven't looked at it. You know, those. What a nice choice. Antivirus protection has expired. I can renew or uninstall. Just ignoring it. There's not even a closed window.
Wait for now.
Big days for now.
Election day? Well, more so the next day when we vote for chair.
Oh, right.
It's tomorrow morning.
Are we gonna meet Wednesday?
Yeah, just to vote on chair and vice chair.
Oh, I probably don't have to come in.
I'm sure we can get you the motion.
Says strawberry.
1 minute.
Just in case the sooner, right? Yeah, being 5:30, one being present, and calling June 12th meeting of the Ordinance Review Committee to order. First order of business is minutes for the May 22nd meeting. I make motion to approve. Motion to approve, is there a second?
I second.
There's a second. Any errors, omissions, or corrections? All those in favor of approving as it printed? And also those present voting. This agenda is going to vote. Oh, let's get the other one. Don't put that on. All right. LD 2003 discussion.
Sure, so breaking news, the implementation deadline I just learned about 20 minutes ago has been extended for a year. I don't know all the specifics, there was, so LD 665 was the original bill proposing to extend it for 2 years. That kind of fell apart and then merged with LD 1706. There was 3 possible amendments, 2 out of those 3 pushed it for those towns that have annual town meeting form of government to July 1, 2024. So I'm not sure which one passed. The other quick piece of it had to do with town council form of government, which we don't have any in Lincoln County, so. We have an extension, now the caveat being there could be a last minute veto from the governor, but it did pass the House and Senate, so I'm hoping that it rolls through. So that's breaking news. As part of that, amendment, final rulemaking will be amended to change the date. And there's also some clarification that needs, one is on the definition of affordable. I think there was a minor error in it. And then the other thing is to talk about how accessory dwelling units comply with shoreline zoning. So they are going to be clarifying that a little bit, and I only learned about this a week ago, is how DEP is viewing LD 2003 implementation in the shoreline zone for accessory dwelling units. And in the shoreline zone, it's the opposite of what LD 2003 says. So LD 2003 says you don't need to have a lot area minimum for an ADU. In shoreline zone, you still do. So their official guidance, which should come out a little while ago, but wasn't widely shared, is that DEP wrote in their December 2022 shoreline zoning news email blast that the question is being asked as to how it applies within the shoreline zone for accessory dwelling units. The answer is straightforward. If the accessory dwelling unit complies with minimum shoreline zoning guidelines adopted by the Department of Environmental Protection, subject to locally adopted accessory dwelling unit land use requirements, and either the primary or accessory dwelling unit is owner occupied. This means the ADU must meet the same requirements as the primary structure did on the lot. So if your town requires 40,000 square feet of land and 200 feet of shore frontage per dwelling unit, then to have an ADU on the property, the lot will have to have 80,000 square feet of land in the shoreline zone and 400 feet of shore frontage. So a part of the, in addition to the implementation deadline extension, it's also going to clarify that piece about ADUs in the shoreline zone.
There's a basic short version, it doesn't apply to the shoreline zone.
Pretty much, yeah,
Because the shoreline zone trumps,
right,
which was where I thought it was all along.
right. So, we, had a workshop last Monday, days are kind of bleeding together. And we had staff from the Department of Environmental, the Department of Economic and Community Development attend. It's the Housing Opportunities Program is tasked with implementing LD 2003. So if you get an opportunity, and you want to spend like an hour watching the webinar, we recorded it and it's on our website. There was a lot of good questions and answers, and they provided a lot of information, most of which I sent around an email. I think I sent it to all of you as well on Tuesday of last week, that had a link to the recording and a link to the other supplemental materials that they handed out. And the final update I have is Jackie got in touch with me and Carl last week, towards the end of the week, about how the select board decided to move forward. So my understanding is it was a split vote on whether to require a maximum of ADU, but the majority vote was not to, and not to regulate short-term rentals, and then to look into parking requirements. That being said, they did ask the ORC to look at what other towns are doing. So I have spent the day looking at what other towns in Lincoln County are doing for those three topics, ADUs, short-term rentals, and parking. And I just finished this spreadsheet like 30 minutes ago, so I'll email it out to all of you tomorrow morning so you can take a look at it. And then if you don't have any questions or changes, I can forward it on to the select board. For as far as the accessory dwelling unit size requirements, those that had size requirements in place prior to LD 2003, which there are actually more towns than I thought in Lincoln County, it spanned between, I think 650 square feet was the smallest, and 1,000 square feet was the largest. Most came in the range of like between 750, 800 square feet of living space. There was a couple towns that had it as a calculation, so it would be a percentage of that finished portion of the single family home, so finished and heated portion of the single home, or a square footage, depending on which was smaller. So if you had a really big house, they wouldn't give you the percentage, you would be capped at the 750. So, and then Booth Bay Harbor, they don't currently have accessory dwelling unit size requirements, they had put it in proposed language as part of their LD 2003 amendments, but those changes were voted down in their entirety at their town meeting last month. So they're going back to the drawing board to have to rewrite it, yeah. And then for short-term rentals, currently no towns in Lincoln County, except for Alna, have, and Newcastle defines, what do they call it? There's this little, Newcastle has a form-based zoning code, which is kind of a whole other beast, but they have a tourist rental definition, but there was no other requirements other than an annual license. And Alna requires a business permit each year from the planning board, and it's only allowed where commercial uses are permitted. You can't transfer it, so if you sell your property, it doesn't transfer with the sale. And then you must meet good neighbor standards, which is kind of newer. And then they codified just the business permit. They'd always required a business permit, but it was never in their ordinance, so they just added it to the ordinance to make it official, and then added good neighbor standards to it. So as part of this spreadsheet, you'll see I have kind of, the town, a quick yes or no, relevant notes, and then links to their ordinance, each ordinance per town, so you can take a look for yourself. The caveat I have with the short-term rentals is that there's a lot of towns, much like Wiscasset, still looking at short-term rentals and whether they want to, so this spreadsheet is likely to change over the next year. And then I was also planning on looking at what other towns in the state have done. There's a handful of them that have short-term rental ordinances, and they kind of range from a simple kind of registry to something much more intensive like Rockland has, where there's a whole separate application and an inspection that go along with it.
Short-term rentals are sort of like cell tower solar farms. It's not a critter we were thought of when the ordinances were created.
Right. So I'm looking at I'll be looking at what other towns in the state are doing. So I'm gonna add that tomorrow morning. And then I'm doing the same for ADUs. For example, I started looking at other towns around us, and Bath just implemented one that an ADU can't be larger than 850 square feet in total area, or 80% of the floor area of the principal dwelling in the building if it's smaller than 1,000 square feet to start in. Which gets you back to 800 square feet. And then what I found interesting about Bath's ADU requirements is that it counts the spaces within the walls as well as porches and decks and basement space used for living purposes. And if you share a porch, or that porch serves more than one dwelling unit, the floor area of the porch is divided among those units that it serves. So theirs is kind of oddly specific and counting things that aren't necessarily habitable space, such as the area between walls.
So basically, there's the outside range.
Yeah, right, rather than habitable floor area. So I will send all this off to you. And then the third thing I looked at was looking at parking requirements, because we were tasked with kind of further defining that in Wiscasset's ordinance. Right now we have, hold on, I can quote it for you. Except for the Village 1 district and the Village Waterfront district, each lot shall provide adequate off-street parking. But we don't really go any further than that. So I was able to pull what other towns have done. A number of them have, pretty much a minimum of 2 spaces for 1 or 2 family residents. And then they have parking schedules is what they're called for all other types of uses. So if it's apartment buildings, congregate housing, businesses, so even it gets down to like barber shops, schools, retail establishments, anything like that, it has parking, and it's based off of like anywhere from square footage, or in the case of a barber shop, it was how many chairs you have in the barber. So I've linked all of those as well, so you can kind of start taking a look and seeing how other towns have done it, so we can then kind of use some as models to figure out how far and in depth we want to go with that for Wiscasset.
Actually, maybe I didn't make myself clear when I sent you the email, but mostly the select board wanted to know what Dan Scott was doing.
Oh, that part I didn't get. So I did every town, I didn't touch that.
No, I would say surrounding towns.
Well, but I know Dennis said, well, you'll see what Dan Scott has done for that.
Oh, well,
For
maybe he
parking.
did, but I We also, we wanted what you were doing.
Okay.
Yeah,
And we didn't actually vote on anything.
no,
It was sort of just a
Oh,
general.
okay, you gave me numbers, so I thought it was an
it
official
was,
vote.
yeah, some of it was half and half, and some of it was. I'm not sure because I don't think you ever said how you were voting.
No, it was more just general direction.
Okay.
So,
Well, you have.
which was, we would like that.
Okay, well, I'll finish it off and we'll have it. So like I said, I just finished it as a draft, so I'm gonna edit it in the morning and then, add some other towns, especially as it relates to short-term rentals, and then send that off to all of you, so you can digest it as able. Sure.
Where's that leave us tonight? Short meeting?
I guess a short meeting, I guess the only other thing I would say is as you start reading, through the, draft changes that I had submitted to you, I don't know, a month ago, you can start sending me, if you wanna just send me edits, and I can start compiling them and tracking them, and we can start going over that. I mean, the nice thing is we have a little bit more breathing room with LD 1706 being voted on, but it's never too early to start, so I can start incorporating any edits you have into a master document for us to work from.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second the motion.
All those in favor? That's that motion to adjourn or not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah,
Sure.
one thing not booth pay, because it's very expensive. And as an applicant, I hate this idea, but as a town official, I can think this, Meredith, they require two things of all applications.
Is that on?
All fees of the town pay, taxes or whatever.
Seems like we.
And there are no outstanding
And then
violations.
the final
or
edit
use
of the
violations.
covenant goes on.
Don't we have that?
Let me check the town
I don't think
website.
so.
We don't ask anybody.
We don't
to
ask
pay
anybody.
taxes. I don't
You
know
don't
how
even
it
get
goes.
told if they paid a fee before they come to a planning board.
That's
But I thought there was, on the second thing, I thought there was a thing about if you have violated anything.
Since
Well,
usually
that's for
all
business
these
license.
It might be for
when they're
business
done,
license,
go
but
up.
it's not in
I
site
think
plan.
that must be what I'm
Those
looking
kind of
at.
things for people to do, like, they're not part of each ordinance, they're
But I don't know
standalone.
Right.
where the solar one.
Note for all applications, you want that far yet. And in the case of the code officer signs off on violations, and it's the town court system signs.
Probably solar.
That makes sense to me.
2021, isn't it?
It's not like, I give somebody
Yeah,
a
that's gonna be
subdivision
funny.
permit, find out they haven't paid taxes on land for 5 years.
Right.
I don't think it's ever happened. I don't think it's known issue, but it's a, I thought it was a nice checkbox.
Right.
But we
Like I
have,
said, where on the other hand, as representing applicants, that's another two pieces of paper I gotta go with.
Right.
but we have dealt with it with business licenses before, that people haven't like paid a sewer bill or something. I don't know that we require it, but we highly encourage that gets
Well,
paid up before.
but everybody gets to check off on business licenses, we have fire department.
Yeah.
So somebody should have it.
Well, but I don't think it asks specifically if like you've had a violation or they know of one. It's more just that particular application, is there an issue?
And I take care of the assessor, and I think that applies, so. Right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in.
I need to see on
My calendar.
Okay, I will text you right now.
So act from 26.
Okay. That was so much information. I didn't understand all
No,
of
that's
it.
okay.
So basically, I think he went to Bruce and Bruce kind of made it sound like it's not happening.
Checking my schedule.
Exactly. Wow, you should just see that with no y'all. And he wants about sewer.
Well, I don't, so it only has to do with if you want sewer and water, you want it to go with the, that's the bonus that is allowed.